two, one. Now we're live. Hey guys, how you doing?
I'm okay. I'm feeling a bit ill, but I'm okay to power through. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm gonna jump on camera in a little bit and join you, but I'm gonna let you do the crypto recap, and then we'll just have our little shindig, I guess, and ask some questions and stuff.
No worries. How was your weekend? Okay. With
Um,
a
yeah,
lot going.
I guess
Yeah.
we.
Okay. All right. Yeah, there has been a lot going on, so I'll get straight into it. And apologies, guys, in advance if I'm not feeling good, but I'm ill at the moment, but I'm going to power through. So apologies if you can't hear me clearly or any other issue. So today this entire it's like just when you've thought you know what's sort of going on in the market broadly speaking, bam, there comes another sideways hit, and also some unexpected defense of the crypto world as well, of the blockchain world, then from unexpected place. So I'm going to start off with the most important, I think, based on where we are in this space, and one of the issues affecting the situation in the crypto space, where we are in the market right now, has been the concern, the regulatory aspect of it, and the fact that the SEC's crackdown on different aspects. So they've targeted decentralized exchange, they've targeted ICOs, they've targeted individuals. So there has been other things happening as well in the space, but this in particular has been given the market some jitters. And I'll speak in regards to that because they did drop out hints, the SEC, that they were looking to go through, that there would probably be pending cases from the outset, but there, there's no let up. Even looking at the where we are in the market, there's simply no let up at all. And I think it's kind of strange they're doing it right now and not even waiting until next year when we're going to receive a bit more clarity from the FATF, and the G20 meeting was in Argentina just recently, and they did speak and come to an agreement in regards to that. It wasn't much like there wasn't new news out that we didn't expect or anything like that. I mean, I'm going to touch upon that, but this development that's happened with the federal court ruling in favor of crypto ICO against the SEC. Now that was surprising, because it was expected that they would rule with the SEC. But here's the thing. So the US federal court, they were looking at a case between BlockVest ICO and the SEC. Now, we know with the SEC, they did give us a warning and so on, and that I'm going to speak on the fact that they've also targeted celebrities and other individuals as well. That ties in to their overall strategies of going through projects and other developments in the space, and looking at it to see whether it would be considered as a security or not, or the distribution of security. So in the case of exchanges, they're looking at that aspect, and they're looking to see what individuals are doing and whether they're also defrauding consumers as well, if there's anything illegal that they've done, and not just on the how can I say, there's the gray area. So but they must have gone through this with a fine-tooth comb before they decided on that action. They must have got some uh, expert advice. They must have consulted on a higher level what their position would be, how this would perhaps they would be thinking of it from an investor protection point of view, or the price manipulation aspect of it. But I think really what they're trying to do is, because the market is looking for clarity and certainty, because a lot they do not, as we're seeing in traditional markets and crypto space, market doesn't like uncertainty. And where crypto space in particular, where especially with institutional investors, their biggest concern is the lack of regulatory clarity and framework, which is what they're working on as we speak. So with this case, the SEC failed to justify that Blockvest was actually producing a security, that they were offering securities. And here's the thing, the court refused to acknowledge the token as a security solely based on the distribution method of the asset. So the fact that this, and now we experts and other observers, they did not expect this to go through. They did not expect this reaction, that they would uphold Blockvest's position, because we've seen from what's happened previously in terms of the SEC and other bodies looking to figure out a way through and trying to give the market some sort of clarity. This hasn't really been challenged. The SEC hasn't been challenged yet. Their position hasn't been challenged, because the majority of the defendants with the SEC against the SEC coming what do you call it, in regards to their investigations, they've actually decided, hey, the SEC is a powerful player. I do not want any mess. I do not want any I don't want my reputation to be damaged. I don't want to lose money, and I certainly don't want my future prospects or my future growth, whether it's in my own personal investments or my own company. Like, I'm thinking this is the sort of conversation ICO developers, programmers, founders, and investors have been having. And so the fact that they've been wanting to settle and not make too much fuss, really giving into the initial demands of the SEC, and taking a proactive approach and say a preemptive approach and say, hey, you know, I'll pay whatever, I'll back off, even if I'm in the right, even if I believe I'm in the right. So the fact that it got to this position, and you know, the federal government, the federal court, excuse me, decided in the favor of ICO, that's going to have implications and ramifications for existing ICOs and future ICOs, and how they and also how investors looking to sue individual ICOs for potential, you know, fraud, or feeling like, you know, they've been burnt, so they're going to try and get their own back, revenge. And if they get legal advice and feel that they may have a case, then they're going to take that up. But now it's going to be more. They're going to take a second breath. They're going to say, hey, hang on, maybe this is going to be a bit more complicated than I realize. You know, I can't hide behind the SEC's precedents that has been set, because they've been cracking down on ICOs. So if you're an investor that's aggrieved, your case would be made easier, because you would point out that, hey, the SEC is looking at this case and they settled with this person, they settled with that ICO or exchange or so on. So because the legal advice, the legal standing is not clear cut in this crypto space right now, because the SEC and the other economies and nations around the world are still yet to formulate a united regulatory framework. So we have this window of opportunity. If you're an investor or ICO founder, or it depends what your interests and motives are, but you have a window of opportunity. If you feel that more regulations will hurt you, this is a time where you're going to take preemptive action proactive actions now. If you feel more regulations will help your situation, especially if you're like a traditional investor that would prefer some regulation to happen, although it defeats the whole point of, of having cryptos, in my opinion, then you're going to see these developments, the SEC crackdown and other aspects, other viewpoints that has been established by the, larger nations across the world, saying that they will eventually find a way to have a unified stance and monitoring, tracking, and especially where they say money laundering and financial terrorism is concerned, but they're also under the guise of investor protection. They're also going to be monitoring individuals they feel that may, you know, they may defraud larger amounts of people, or they may have a case to go against individuals, not just a company, not just a project, or, you know, not just a group of people. So this will affect us all one way and another, directly and indirectly, as investors in the space, as participators in any shape, way, or form. This is not just financially. I feel the way things are going, they're going to end up monitoring people that not just invested in this space, but even if they show an interest or register for any sort of project or any sort of educational initiative, they're going to find, under the guise of tracking and monitoring, like they're going to have a very vast monitoring power. And I feel they're going to do that with artificial intelligence, with certain algorithms that will be specially set to track, because they, as part of, before they can obviously enforce it, they would definitely need to have what do you call it? They'd need to have movements, they need to have policies and actions in place to be able to crack down, to monitor and track, and I think they're going to devise all sorts of tools, even tools we don't know of yet, programs we're not aware of. Is going to be completely written in code. Brand new codes will be written. That's how I feel about it. And if it hasn't come out yet, or if it's not public information yet, I think their work as we speak, they've got a department or a group of people or a team, not only trying to figure out this space and the impact it will have on different stakeholders, including themselves. They're going to be looking at what does this mean in relation to their traditional, the status quo, the traditional structures, whether this is going to damage or threaten somehow the integrity of the traditional structures, and if they feel that this is becoming the new battlefront, and this is whether bad actors, scammers, criminals will eventually find a way to penetrate all areas of this space, and be able to make this a way, a new norm, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So this has long-term implications, and I do feel that they're going to end up finding ways to track and monitor us, even if I don't even know if they're going to give us an opportunity to opt in or opt out of certain things. I know certainly with what we've seen with the privacy issues with Facebook, with many other companies out there who have been, even individuals have been taking them to court saying, hey, you've invaded my privacy, and you're not, also data protection violations as well, and so on. So because this is a this digital aspect of it is so pervasive, because it's so hard to control, because it's globalized, because it's interconnected. The real warfare is has been said for a while now, the real warfare, the real battleground is online, and that they need to, it's hard. It's like whack-a-mole. When they have got rid of one thing, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, even 10 lookalikes, similar outfits pop up to replace that one that they taken down. It's like a losing battle, and so they have to create from scratch, whilst building on the existing framework or existing technology, but they need to create from scratch something that will be ahead of time, and certainly I do not expect it to be released to the public. If any, in any case, if you look at the history of certain technologies that have we're now taking them for granted, but before, some of them have actually started as being classified as secret missions or secret developments and technologies, and now we take it for granted. Some of it has been used in NASA missions or Area 51 missions, but it's now come to be public, and it's too late by that time, obviously. So this is this is all tying into what we're seeing going on, that they're trying to figure out this space. They're trying to figure out what this means for them as regulatory bodies, and they're having to question what they really stand for. They talk about investor protection, but if you look at the fact that there's been other legitimate scams, legitimate. I'm actually, this reminds me of the Enron case, where people were defrauded, and I just thought, and also more recently with the 2008 financial collapse based on the securitization, the mortgage-backed assets that were junk, that ended up being junk, and you know, affected some subprime lenders that they knew they couldn't afford to pay their mortgage back there. So the fact that, you know, they really, how can I put this? There's, if there was, if I feel like they are there really to, what can I say? Go in and punch their ticket, like you know, like you clock into your job, and you're just literally doing your job. You're not really too bothered about, you know, taking the brave initiative to really crack down on the real manipulators, the real scammers, the real elite, the people, the elites at the top who are responsible for, you know, the way the system is set up to hurt the majority, the poorest of the poor. I feel like that's the real scam. I mean, yes, the criminals, the bad actors, it's in every space, but I also feel like they're hypocrites because they also turn a blind eye to certain scams that are legitimate and that actually do not benefit the majority of the working class or the middle class. To some respect, it benefits them, but I feel like the working class and the poorest of the poor, they're getting a raw deal. And the SEC and regulatory bodies like them, I feel like they need to change some of they need to go for what's in front of them right now with the existing traditional systems, and I feel like they're not doing that because I feel somehow that their back is being scratched, and it's vice versa, that they have some sort of something to hold them in their position where they can't, that they're restricted somehow, that there might be a leash on them, because the thing is, if they end up bringing down some of the big boys, I feel like it will have ramifications for it would probably go all the way back to the senators and congressmen, who they have very powerful lobbies pestering them day in, day out. They also sponsor their political campaigns, and it's all dirty, and it's all not all the, I should be careful what I say, not dirty, because it is legal how they do it, but is it right? Is it morally right? Is it ethical? And even if it is ethical, how is it right that we have very, very rich nations, not just the States, but even in Europe, even with the UK, that we have this level of inequality? And I do feel they have the answers. They just don't want to change it. It's not in their incentive. It's not in their benefit long term to have the 95% become more powerful than the 5%, because the system is not created that way. And but in some respects, they would be out of a job. They would, certainly the way technology is going, if you bypass regulation, if you have trustless technology and areas, trustless features where you do not need a third party, why would we need regulators in that case? If we can just find a way to mitigate and reduce the criminality and the the fraud and the security breaches, the hackers, if there's a way technologically to, we can't eliminate it, we can't get rid of it completely 100%, but what we can do is reduce it, and we can directly compare the results after we've had mass adoption and see if the traditional space is better rather than where the new reality would be. So if you're ending up saving more time, money, and you have more protection in the new space, then that will speak for itself. But if you feel that the traditional space is still serving your interests, and you still haven't, what do you call it? You still haven't felt like you're that you still have full freedoms to do what you wish, and you feel strongly that the government will protect you in any instance, then by all means you can do that. So this is really about power, and I keep saying that C word, control. This battle, this new era where we are, this control over your mind. I mean, it's always actually been happening since human history, the control over mind and mindsets. But where we are now, we're getting more and more opportunities, and technology really driving the change, and giving us options that we didn't have before. We, 100 years ago, all the propaganda, all the technology, a lot of things were restricted, and we were denied certain rights and freedoms. But as more and more, like as we realize the power and extent that we have, and also with more and more of us taking what do you call it, responsibility for our destiny and our future in terms of what we want, the dreams that we go for. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, and I always like to quote this, but it's so true, with Microsoft, Bill Gates, and with Steve Jobs. There's no way, there's absolutely no way. You only have to look back at that period of time, what was being said and done. The fact that I like that little story with Steve Jobs, for example, the beautiful fonts that you get on your Mac. He had taken calligraphy classes. Now, if he hadn't taken that, he wouldn't have come out with the beautiful fonts on that. So there's certain things that come, all like, it doesn't make sense then, but it comes back to this now, and all those steps have to happen, and to have those disruptive technologies. It's going to scare the status quo. It's going to scare ordinary investors, ordinary your average Joe. And that has been the history, that people are initially afraid of change, and they hold on to the old ways, even if the old ways are detrimental to them, or voting against their own interest. For example, where we see in the political world, like you know, it doesn't make sense. It logically and rationally doesn't make sense why people choose certain things, but it's because you know, you feel safe and comfortable in what you know. And even if you know that there's uncertainty and you don't know how things will turn out, but you know there's alternatives out there that can make your life better and easier, you would prefer someone else. I'm speaking in the general, the average mindset, that people with that, they'd rather have someone else do the protection. So the point I'm making anyway with the ICOs and the SEC and the federal court is that we're going to see a lot of these cases. By the way, the SEC has pending cases. They're going to go after them, and they're going to make an example of them. I feel like, okay, they're going to win some battles, they're going to lose some battles, but we fully did not expect them to be this one. So so this gives certain, it depends who you are. If you're an investor looking to sue an ICO, this may just give you food for thought, because that would end up costing you more money in terms of legal fees and time aspect. If you're the SAC, you're going to be like, okay, I've got pending cases, perhaps I need to, you'd have a slightly different perspective. Now the burden is on me, the onus is on me to prove this, and now I don't have that gap or that leeway to really fully flex my muscle. I have to prove this or I have to prove that. The more burden is placed on the SEC, the more easier it is to win cases, in my opinion. If you're coming and defending yourself as an individual, as an ICO, as an exchange. So this would give, I feel, the space, you know, room to like to have a almost not a sigh of relief, but to think, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I'm gonna, you know what, let me not work, let me not just do this what do you call it, knee-jerk reaction against the SEC. Let me not just you know, pay the fines, penalties in regards to whatever they bring, the charge they bring against you. Let me take a look at this and see if I have a real chance at winning my case or winning my position, and if I can extract that from the SEC without it going to court. Perhaps I could quote that as, you know, anyone could quote the precedence of what just happened with this case. So here's where they're now, they're going to have to think about their existing strategy and see if there's room for them to they're going to be analyzing their and reviewing their positions. It depends, you know, on who they are. If you're an ICO, you're going to look at this as hope. Basically, you're going to be like, okay, the SEC is not going to crack down on every single, even if they try and crack down on every single ICO. I have hope in the, you know, with what the with the federal court has done. So this is really going to open the door. And if there's more and more rulings in support of ICOs, it's going to make life easier for them and make life harder for the SEC. So we're going to see, this is real early days, guys, really early days, but we're already starting to see some of the the scrutiny being applied by all sides, and I think overall the fact that we're in this position where we're still moving ahead regardless, whether SEC cracks down on us or not, as investors, as ICOs, or whatever the case may be. But life still goes on, investments still happen, ICOs still get product, what do you call it, developments still happen. There's no, I don't think there's going to be engineers, developers, and coders that are going to, you know, lose sleep over this, unless they've done something illegal. Then they've got something to be afraid of. But this is really going to really make people challenge their existing thoughts and positions and perspectives, and see, because this space is still being worked out. It's still there's a lot of uncertainty there, but there's a lot. It's like some sort of how can I say, it's like a digital land grab. There's still opportunities out there to really stake your philosophy and idea and product and community around. And you, if you still believe in what you're going to end, what you want to do, and there's people backing you, that there's strong community behind you, I think there's some value in that, because it is ultimately going to be a battle of ideas, and you know, and practically and financially, it has to work. It has to make sense. Otherwise, you know, there has to be some sort of value that it brings to stakeholders. Otherwise, it doesn't get done, or if it does, it's not going to last that long without real world adoption, real world user cases, I keep saying. So but I do understand, you know, as an ICO, you may not even be able to get to that stage if you're going to be considered selling securities and you know, dead on arrival, basically. So these are all things that they really have to think about. ICOs have been bashed, and they have got bad reputation because of the scams out there. But there has been some ICOs that really have demonstrated real world value, and they helped to change the game and the perspective on what's possible when, you know, amazing ideas come together and there's a community of people behind it, and they have a different way of funding, a different way of providing value so that idea can get off the ground, and if it works in reality and it makes people's lives easier and better, then there's always going to be demand for that. It may not be, you know, the top 10 or top 5, but it certainly will have a very they'll still have a community. And as long as there's people out there supporting these projects, and especially if they have financial backing behind it, especially what can I say, not just financially, but in terms of marketing as well. They have a real online presence and they can drive engagement, drive traffic, and what can I say, the real power of your, not just your money, but your voice, your how can I say it? That if there's a real community spirit behind it, I think that's going to be really hard to crack. If even if like everything is burning, if there's a strong community behind it and they feel is providing some sort of value, and even if they don't get any value right now, if they feel and think, remember it's perceptions, if investors feel long term that they're going to get some sort of value, and this is part of the cost of coming in as an investor early on in the tech adoption cycle, if they really believe that and they believe in the project and they can see where it's going, and they feel it'll have you know, amazing prospects for change in the market, and it's disruptive, then they're going to be there backing that until, in some cases I've seen some conversations saying, I'm going to back this or back that until the wheels fall off or until the cows come home. Even if my coin goes to zero, I'm going to hold on to it no matter what, because I know that's the risk that I'm willing to take. I'm risking to lose this or that amount because I truly believe in this or that, and the facts and the rationale, there's logic behind it, and so on. So people, different investors have different motives and different ideas about certain things. So it really is to do with the philosophy, not just what they're practically going to deliver, but the philosophy, the vision behind that as well. So this, I see it in its in that context of the regulatory aspect, but I also see this as the bigger picture, the implications it can have on the adoption rate, or on how it's perceived by different stakeholders. I can see how this may embolden ICOs, for example, but make the SEC feel like they need to not completely rein in their what do you call it, their moves at the moment, their crackdown, but perhaps take just take more due diligence and more time to really make sure that this is watertight cases that they're going after, or if they feel like they'll have more than 50% of chance of winning, or intimidating the person or group that they're going into to settle up, which is what has been the case with the majority of the people that the SEC charges. So yeah, I can see how investors and the SEC will become more cautious, in my opinion, in regards to going after ICOs, simply because the burden will be on them to describe if the asset is a security, and that there has to be, according to the court, in the ICO context, there must be a risk of financial loss as well, and that they have to prove it. And that's the most contentious part, is the burden of proof. And even if it's like an airdrop, for example, as it's an airdrop by itself, meaning just giving you the tokens for free, it can't be seen as a security offering, even if the airdrop tokens are pre-functional as well. So they're saying, in fact, that the federal court went out of its way to reject the argument from the SEC that just the act of distributing any asset through an airdrop or a token sell is a security. So that the token offering, that they have to describe what a security is, and they have to prove, more importantly, prove that it's a security. Remember, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, they said that they didn't consider it as a security, but they're going after the low-hanging fruit that they feel are would be considered as security in their eyes. But here's the first time where the court is saying explicitly, show us the proof and explain that this, prove us to that this is a security. And if they do that, then other similar ICOs that were happening over the last few years, they're going to be in big trouble. Even if they, I don't know what's going to happen. Even if they no longer exist, if they still will be, if they will still be gone after and challenged by the SEC. So that's we're going to see how much of an impact this would have across the space. I still feel like we're not going to fully know the impact until perhaps several months from now, because they do have pending cases. I know certainly by next year, we're going to have more clarity from the SEC and the federal courts if there's more cases being brought to their table. But certainly this is a precedent that has been set by their decision, by their federal court's decision to reject the SEC's notion that the block vest is a security. So that's definitely a development to watch, because that's going to have ramification for the entire space, especially for ICOs, and also is probably going to affect how investors move and how investors invest in this space, especially if they're going to go for ICOs. So this is really going to make everyone think twice about their next move, essentially. So so if an investor in an ICO is to file a lawsuit against a project, the investor themselves as well need to prove somehow that the investor invested in the token sale directly by looking at the website, white paper, or some other information offered by the issuer. That's another thing to remember as well. So yeah, it's going to be bloody. I think there's going to be a lot more ICOs from what I'm understanding that will start challenging the SEC. It depends how they feel in regards to whether they have a strong case, but I know this is going to give them more hope. and legally speaking, there's a more clearer line boundary that's been established. So certainly interesting one to watch, because I do anticipate more ICOs coming in the future, and you know, it's certainly going to be interesting to see. And speaking of the SEC, I have to mention this because it's in line with what's been going on with the SEC bringing charges to individuals, exchanges, and developments. So if you guys have read recently, I think this was over the weekend, J.A.R.V.i.Z, another one, the SEC brought another one, and Floyd Mayweather, they got charged by the SEC. They were penalized and fined, and now the SEC is now going for social media influencers. That's on their list. They've got different targets to do, like exchanges and projects and so on. But social media influencers, oh my God. Do you guys remember last year there was like, who was it? Wu-Tang Clan, is it Ghostface Killer? I can't remember who came out with Cream, with the coin. Also, there's been a plethora of them, but my mind's gone blank. But I know, what's his name? What is his name? I forgot now. But anyway, Floyd Mayweather. Oh, 50 is what I was going to say as well. 50 took that case about him being paid in Bitcoins, then saying, I don't have Bitcoins, or that he can't afford it or whatever. But anyway, there's been social media, I mean, there's been celebrities and social media influencers promoting over Instagram and their Facebook and other platforms. Some of them were paid, some of them not, and they decided to take a position in what they feel about crypto and blockchain. But these guys, DJ Khaled and Floyd Mayweather, were actually paid. So with Mayweather, he failed to disclose promotional payments from 3 ICO issuers, including $100,000 from Centratech. And he, and what's his name, DJ Khaled failed to disclose $50,000 from Centratech as well. And they use words like game changer, and then Mayweather, that was Khaled, and Mayweather said something like, the ICO starts in a few hours, get yours before they sell out. I got mine. And, you know, knowing that they've got such influence on people, on their the reach that they have, these are people that may not have a clue about crypto, but they're going to Google Centratech, and they're going to look at that. I mean, I don't know what percentage would even, I don't know how many would even know what a white paper is, yet alone, you know, wanting to, you know, have a professional investor mindset, and go and do their own due diligence, not just go and take a position because DJ Khaled or Mayweather had said so. But that's what the SEC is pertaining to, because they feel that that they've done something that they consider illegal, that they would consider Centra as illegally promoting an securities offering. So this is why, and they didn't disclose it, more importantly, to the SEC. So yeah. But here's what's concerning me is during that time it was a gray space, and it still is to some respect, but there was hardly any regulatory clarity. There's no fully Wild West, and there was a lot of hype and euphoria around that time. People with no clue about the blockchain space or cryptos coming in because they've seen all the stories and the hype, and people making a lot of money in the space in a relatively short time. And here you are, your favorite, if you follow DJ Khaled or Floyd Mayweather, saying, hey, I'm into this, and they're treating it as if they're promoting what do you call it, a clothing line or some other jewelry line or something. And this is completely different situation, and people that they're concerned, that that they're literally, there's people doing no due diligence and they're going to end up burning themselves in bad investments. That's one concern, but the fact that they're now seeing, here's what they said. Actually, let me say this. So any celebrity or individual who promotes a virtual token or coin that is a security must disclose the nature, scope, and amount of compensation received in exchange for the promotion. So yeah, they have to comply with existing rules regarding securities. But here's still, this is the problem we've been having, is what counts as a security isn't clear except Bitcoin and Ethereum. So now that they're going after individuals and going through these projects one by one and determining that these are securities, that's where they're like, uh-oh, like the people that were involved in promoting these saying, hey, I'm not a professional investor, I'm a paid promoter, don't sue me. That I didn't know, I thought this and that, and there was no regulations or anything to guide me. But I'm sure they took legal advice. That I'm assuming, being that influential and that wealthy, before you promote anything, I'm sure you do your due diligence and say, hey, is me promoting this ICO going to, will this eventually, is this going to be a problem not just now but in the future? I'm sure they weighed up all their options. I'm just guessing, but if they're doing this correctly, if their lawyer has advised them to still proceed and promote because there's no regulations that states, hey, you can't do this at that time, they may even have a case. DJ Khaled and Floyd Mayweather may have wanted to go ahead and challenge the SEC, but they settled before the news came out regarding the federal court stating they rejected the SEC against Blockfest. So again, they took legal, I'm assuming legal advice that said, hey, settle with SEC immediately, don't play with them. They'll take you down, they'll make your life hard, and they must have weighed all their options and decided, let me just pay the fines, which has been the case with a lot of these individuals and companies that the SEC has been going after. So yeah, we're at least getting more clarity with where the SEC stands. That's a good thing. But the bad thing is that they're targeting individuals and exchanges and other aspects of the crypto space that now tells us, hey, life as an investor, life is about, potentially as an investor, as an ICO founder, as a development project founder, launching an ICO, funding your project through ICOs, that's going to be giving you food for thought. And that's going to scare I think that if they're clever, they'll be taking legal advice right now. Even if there's not much to stand on and there's not much clarity, I think they'd be thinking about their future and making sure they survive and not get taken down by the SEC or any other regulatory body, because they still have to operate from wherever they are in the States. And I think what may happen is if the SEC continues to crack down, I just believe that other developments, other projects and exchanges will simply up and leave and go to crypto friendly, blockchain friendly, ICO friendly jurisdictions. It's as simple as that. It just depends. It's not a one a one size fit all approach, as I keep saying. It really depends on what your motives are in the space. And if you can circumvent some of these regulations, if there's a way to target the US market without having the SEC, without any sort of legal ramification and the SEC can't touch you, if there's some sort of loophole, then I think that's the option that they're going to explore. So yeah, there's the fact that they feel, SEC feels many of these ICOs are securities, and that they're going after them because they feel compelled that they're on the right side and they can use their enormous influence and power, knowing that the government is behind them. That is very intimidating. I can imagine this is very, that as a it depends if you're an exchange or individual. I can see how intimidating that would feel as well, because it's not just about cryptos, your crypto investments or crypto interests that you'd be concerned about. It's the other areas of business that you're in, even down to your personal life. You may have to do a double take and consider the potential worst case scenario if the SEC makes an example of you. That you prepare for the worst and hope for the best is really the mantra in this space at the moment, and elsewhere as well. So yeah, I expect, in my opinion, expect to see more and more cases being brought to the front. Do expect ICOs to have more confidence, and still be cautious to some respect, but have more confidence to go ahead and do what they do, as long as it's legal. And they're, if they're looking to scam people and so on, I think those are the people that really are going to be worried. But if they're legit and they feel that it's, that they've got enough of a case to stand up against the SEC, then I think that's where it's going to happen. So, but I do, from what I'm seeing, the next wave of the crypto crackdown by the SEC, it will hit social media influencers, celebrities, and any individuals that the SEC feels that have been promoting what they consider securities without being compliant to existing laws, and not registering with the SEC. So that's really going to be one to watch, as I said. And then on top of that, the G20, as I mentioned before, they are meeting up. Sorry, they have met up, and they've come up with something called a joint declaration on fair and sustainable development. And they have, I mean, it wasn't a surprise, but they have said they're going to step up efforts to have, they literally, just in a nutshell, they're going to be looking to maximize the potential, the opportunity, and the promise in new technology where the financial sector is concerned. But they want to mitigate, they want to minimize the risks that involves for them as well. And that's no surprise. But here's one thing that they agreed is that they're going to have an open financial system, because they believe that will be crucial to support economic growth. So that's something that they've come into consensus, and that they're tackling. They do expect more risks to come out over the next 5 to 10 years, and vulnerabilities in the traditional financial systems, as well as the new ones. And they're going to be looking to go after, to find ways to regulate cryptos for anti-money laundering and financing of terrorism as well. They're working alongside the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF standards that they're going to employ for now. And they're going to be open to taking more action on top of that as well. It will be country to country, but they're going to more or less have something that will be similar to each other, but it may be slightly adapted for their own markets and economies, in line with their scale and in line with the protections that they have themselves right now. So there's a lot of pressure mounting on them. Some of it is coming from investors, but it's really the big players that are really scared about all the uncertainty, and the wild west nature. They want the government to be involved, and they see that this space will continue to grow, and adoption rate and the popularity will return, and it will be, they'll, you know, people's ignorance, there's going to be more, I don't think you can eliminate scams completely. You can reduce them, but I think there'll still be scams, that as long as there's uneducated, vulnerable people and people wanting to make a quick buck, they will always be the targets for scammers, or for companies that feel they can exploit those vulnerabilities to their financial advantage. There'll always be some sort of parties that come in the space to do that, because it's too good to miss out. That so yeah, the European Parliament have recommended regulations be put against cryptos, and that it should be harmonized across all the jurisdictions, especially in Europe, and that it should be taxed. They feel that it should be taxed. Crypto should be taxed similar to investments in other financial assets. We even had the British Parliamentary Committee in August. They called on the government to introduce regulations to protect investors from the Wild West, is how they see it, the Wild West situation. But you also have Malta, Switzerland, Gibraltar having to introduce their own crypto regulations that's actually promoting investment, foreign investment, and helping to be the foundation for blockchain-based businesses and exchanges like Binance and so on. So we're going to see this dual, I feel like we're going to see this dual world, where you're going to have on one side countries and jurisdictions that are afraid to go against the big boys in this world, the big leaders, the G20, and they're going to side with them and adopt their regulatory framework and regulatory approaches. And then you have others that are rebellious and more optimistic, and they're going to be the refuge, they're going to be the shelter, they're going to be the new ground and frontier for businesses and projects and individuals in the crypto space, in the blockchain space, for them to come there and set up and be home, knowing that they're going to have legal protection, and that that, you know, they're in a physical location and can be protected, but they're also digitally, could perhaps be anywhere in the world, but because they're registered in Malta, Switzerland, or Gibraltar, for example, they're going to be safe. So somehow they're going to be safe, and it just depends country to country what the rules are as well. Because if you're physically in one country but you're doing business, registered as a business is another, it depends on the country where you're physically at, and it also depends on the country where you have your business set up. You definitely need to take legal advice, regardless of what your situation is anyway, as an investor, as a business owner, and so on. So yeah, there's a lot going on. And then if you remember, there was a money laundering case scandal that was brought around against Deutsche Bank as well. And they were raided by local authorities, they under the suspicion of money laundering. I'm saying that to make this point that cryptos and the blockchain space, they get a bad rap for all they're stating that it's a breeding ground for criminals to criminality to happen and so on. But if you look at what I'm saying is, with the traditional space, they're also now being found out about the scams that they're running, and don't think money laundering ain't happening in covered up in legal ways. There's tax havens as well, and there's companies, major companies, where they have registered entities in these tax havens, and sheltering literally billions and billions of dollars from mainland tax treatment. So I think there was a case where Apple had decided to change. They had been registered somewhere in a tax haven, but then they switched it to be taxed back in America, I believe. But that's not going to be the case with all of the rest of the businesses. They're definitely going to do what is best for them, and if they can get away with it, they will. So expect more. I think that it will help the narrative. It will bolster crypto and blockchain space. It will mitigate some of that narrative that was put on in the negative. The FUD coming out regarding scams and criminal activities, money laundering in particular, with the fact that they can point out to Deutsche Bank as a case where actually, hey, this is a traditional financial institution, yet they've been found to be allegedly doing money laundering there as well. And I'm sure just because it isn't being reported doesn't mean it ain't happening behind closed doors. Some criminality, in legitimate companies and institutions. So that's why we need an alternative, in my opinion. It's good that perhaps this may be the checks and balances, that this may allow people to vote with their wallets and be able to challenge what's really going on, not just by voice but with resources and the time. So a lot going on. Also, Ohio as well. Ohio, remember last week I mentioned that they decided to allow domestic registered businesses to pay their taxes in Bitcoin. And that started literally on that Monday that I mentioned. Now they decided that tech funds will be over $100 million will go into blockchain startups. Again, this is all in line with their vision and their movement to attract investment into their state and to be able to give that economy a kickstart. As I'm sure I mentioned to you, that there's a lot of states really concerned about budget deficit, really concerned about the amount of debt on the state and federal level. So and also the job anything to bring potential job opportunities to their communities as well, and to really be at the forefront of something new. So these early stage startups, developing these blockchain based technologies, it will have to know it is for business and government for now, but they're looking to expand out to all startups. Here's the thing that they mentioned, which I really like, is that the money's only going to be available if the company takes advantage of one of Ohio's opportunity zones. And these zones provide tax breaks for investors to help encourage development in the poorer neighborhoods. Now that I do like, because anything that does bring any sort of investment into areas neglected in the state, in any shape or form, I'm all for that, because it's new, it's challenging. It's not just the physical aspect of it, it's really about breaking that mental cycle, that poverty, that scarcity mindset. And I feel like if getting people to really think big, whether it's crypto, blockchain, or some other tech, some other tech development in the tech space, I'm all for that. That's a good thing, because it's something new, something based as an alternative, and it opens them the opportunity up on a global level to them. So once they have that experience, they can take that and go anywhere in the world that they wish. Because with the blockchain, that's a worldwide nature, the globalized nature of it, decentralized nature of it is going to ensure that there's more opportunities going forward than if they had stuck to one little traditional area in their state, and that's it. They're locked off and they're there. Or at the most, they'd have opportunities nationwide or even worldwide, but there'll be more difficulties. But the fact that there'll be increased adoption, and that if it's going to help and provide overall net value, then by all means, in my opinion, I think it's a great thing what Ohio's doing. And some Rust Belt states and some still manufacturing states that have had manufacturing pasts, or they still have some sort of I know a lot of it has shifted to Mexico and China and a lot of other Asian economies, and also the Latin world, but I feel Ohio and other states have an opportunity to get ahead using technology, and I feel that's going to be one of the key things to watch out for as we move forward. Another point I wanted to make is Coinbase opening up over-the-counter trading desk. As you guys may be aware, that private investors, institutional investors, some of them have been investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum and other cryptos via over-the-counter trades. And they're looking to expand on that in line with, it's only for institutional investors, in line with Coinbase Prime and Coinbase Custody. And so for Coinbase, the strategy that they're going for is to, they've got a powerful position with the retail investors, but really where they see their future and where the money's at is institutional investors, and they're building the infrastructure to allow that to happen. And certainly on the regulatory front, they have been ensuring that they don't approve coins that could potentially be classified as a security. They've been very careful with that, but also the real infrastructure needed, like in terms of the custody aspect, they want to ensure that they have tools for hedge funds, exchanges, and ICO teams, and so on, and individuals to be able to help them with that. And it's something to also having said that, Coinbase is still very careful about what coins they approve in light of what the SEC is doing, cracking down on ICOs. So it's probably going to end up slowly, the rest, because they did mention there's hundreds of coins that they're looking at, but the ones in particular were Stellar, Cardano, Stellar and Cardano, those are ones that the market is watching out for to see if that's been approved, and it's under review. But we know with BAT, Zcash just recently, it has been, and 0x, it has been approved, and it's going to be a journey, and Coinbase will be watching keenly what the SEC does moving forward. And if the SEC is going to go after them. And then very quickly, South Korea is planning to tax ICOs and cryptocurrencies. And also there was something else as well. There's so much that happened. Intel and GM, I know with GM, they filed the blockchain patent to manage data from autonomous cars. And I know with my doorbell has just rung. And also with Intel, they've filed another blockchain patent. I know with there was another one as well, Health Alliance. I forgot the name, but there was another, Modern Healthcare, I think they're called, that they've got they're trialing out a blockchain for improved data quality as well. So that's it from me. I could literally go on forever, but Aking, what's happening on the charts? Hello? Aking?
I was on mute. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on in space, which I had to mention, but go ahead. What's going on in the charts?
I mean, well, the market has, unfortunately, well, maybe depending on how you look at it, could be a fortunate thing or unfortunate thing. It's been just kind of on a bearish spiral. So I know a lot of people are looking forward to this thing bottoming out. But as of now, I don't see any reason for it to bottom just as of yet. I think that if you are long-term investing to cryptocurrency, I'm talking over the next 10, 15, 20 years, then dollar cost averaging is not a bad idea. I know a lot of people are against dollar cost averaging even at these levels. And I was against it at prior levels at the 6,000, 8,000, 10,000, $15,000 range. I didn't suggest, well, I didn't think, I don't suggest, but I didn't think dollar cost averaging at those levels were wise. But now that we're getting to the sub $4,000 range, I think that if you were to dollar cost average and if you do believe in cryptocurrency over the next 10, 15, 20 years, I think that's pretty fair. I think that's a pretty fair thing to do. I would just say that a lot of these alt projects, I don't think are going to stay or come back. So I still believe in Bitcoin. I still think Bitcoin is going to do what it's supposed to do over the next 20 years. I think it could honestly become a real medium of exchange over the next 20 years. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think this is our first real, true bear cycle we're going to be in, where it could take a year, year and a half, 2 years to even get out of this bearish momentum to for the bears to finish selling off or start accumulating and then start working our way back up. So it's all your perspective. I know some people feel like all of this is going to zero. I know some people feel like all of this is going to $1 million even by the end of the year. Um, I'm just kind of on the sidelines, accumulating here, accumulating there. I do think Bitcoin is going to be around for is going to be here to stay. I can't say the same for a lot of these alt projects, but I do think Bitcoin does have that potential. But until it starts to really make a strong trend upwards, it's just really hard um, to sell anybody on that, you know? So there's a lot of things coming down fundamentally as far as Bitcoin and why a lot of people feel like it's going down to low 2016, 2015 levels. We're talking sub 3 digit Bitcoin. So there's a lot of fundamental reasons for that. So we're just in a very highly speculative space. So I would just suggest again, never investing more than what you're willing to lose, and to get comfortable. I mean, this could be a while. We could be looking 2020 before this thing really starts to turn back around. So
Mm.
this is the bear market, and I know a lot of people had the confidence that the cost of mining will support the price, and I just see that as long as we're continue to trade under the cost of mining, is really going to spell something very disastrous as far as the bottom price on Bitcoin, whatever that bottom price is. So um, it just doesn't make sense to mine it right now. So
Mm.
that's what I'm a little cautious of. And if it's going to continue to be under the cost of mining it, how that's going to affect its long-term viability in the future as far as getting people excited and getting people involved, getting people using it. Um, that's what I'm concerned about. So as of right now, I would just, for me, it's just like whatever spare change I have, I could throw at Bitcoin. Yeah, that's fine. Instead of going to movies, maybe I'll buy some crypto. That's cool. But honestly, I'm not looking at it until 2040. That's when I'll be looking at it. So God willing, I'm around to see it. So I'm not
Wow, 2040.
$10 here, $20 there, $100 here, $200 there, just whatever, until something really happens to where this thing starts trending upwards again. I don't think crypto is dead. I don't think Bitcoin is going away. But now is when the people that do think that, they're going to be the loudest, and they're going to have the most credence lent to their voices, because the price is
Mm,
supporting their positions.
absolutely. Supporting their narrative right now.
Yeah, you gotta control your own narrative. Stick to what you believe. Stick to your research. Stick to what makes sense to you,
Mm.
and do just that. So I'm not really stressed about the price of crypto. I think crypto has a long way to go. I think blockchain technology has a long way to go as far as the applications that we have in a real
Hmm.
society. So I'm patient. I'm just patient. But as far as price, um, yeah, guys. I mean, I think we're still going to sub 3K. I mean, sub 3 digit Bitcoin. I think Ethereum is going to be $14 by the time it's all said and done. I gave
$40.
I gave uh I gave an analysis on Ethereum, taking it down to like $60, and it was pretty absurd for a lot of people at the time to see
What?
60. This is back when I think Ethereum was like $600, something like that. But I mean, the way price is painting now is really giving us opportunity
Wow.
for us to range and create new price patterns and reach newer lows. So for me, I still see Bitcoin at $1,200 and possibly capitulating down to the $400, $600 range. And then Ethereum, I see it at $60 and possibly capitulating down to the $13, $14 range. And, a lot of these altcoins I don't think are coming back. So like I'm really concerned. I'm not really concerned, but I'm really interested in Neo because Neo just jumped off the cliff. I'm really interested in Nano. Nano kind of jumped off the cliff too. So we'll see. We'll see. What I would say is just, if anything, really pay attention. And honestly, I would love to see Bitcoin's dominance come back. If you notice, the more Bitcoin lost its dominance, the quicker the market decelerated. And I think that's what makes this year different than other years because we weren't inundated by crap coins, crap altcoins. And the moment Bitcoin started losing its dominance, that's when the market started really having the most severe bear market of its kind. When I say severe, I'm not talking essentially percentage value loss because there's been other bear markets where there was a larger loss. But I think when this is all said and done, considering the development in Bitcoin and its mass appeal and its mass exposure, I would consider this the most significant bear market when you take into account all the fundamentals and where we are as far as development. So even though the percentage value isn't as great, I would consider this the most significant bear market. And I think we actually just got started. I think about a third of the bear market is behind us. I think we have like 2/3 more to go. So we have to drop a lot more, and then we have to go through accumulation. I think that's going to take a year and a half, 2 years maybe. So
Wow. You said 2 years.
yeah, I mean,
My
if
God.
you guys are crypto enthusiasts, if you love crypto, like you really don't want 1,000 altcoins. You really want Bitcoin to be, dominant again. Either that or do our own, crypto, do our own blockchain. So, yeah, I just see that as Bitcoin goes, the rest goes. And when Bitcoin's dominance started to slip, you look at the graph, it's just like everything else. Um, and obviously we had the stock. I'm sorry, we had the what's the term? I can't think of the name. We had the CBOE come in and they shorted it. But I'm just saying, as far as a fundamental, I would like to see things get back to where Bitcoin is more dominant. I think that would make this space healthier, and I think that would get rid of a lot of these shady alts and bringing confidence back to the space. I think that'd be great. It'd be a cleaner space. But yeah, so I wish I had something more exciting to say, but just long term, yeah, nothing has really changed. If we go below $3,500, I can guarantee. Nah, I don't want to say that, but
No, don't say guarantee. I was about to say not in this space. There's no guarantees.
if we trade $1 below $3,500, there's a very high probability we're going to $1,200. And if y'all thought this drop was violent, we're going to have another drop that's equivalent as violent, and we're going to 12. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
It sounds if you weren't so if you weren't a seasoned and an experienced investor, and this was the first time you were hearing this would be terrifying. But if those of you that have already seen and you've really studied the history and you've really seen how markets work, how they the psychology behind it, and how they're designed to take money away from investors, and shake out weaker hands. And also, if you take a look at it from the tech adoption cycle where we are, and if you look at all the fundamentals and as well as price action, it really does give you, it does, I'm speaking for myself now, but it certainly does make me feel like there's a lot more to come, and that I shouldn't be panicking. I shouldn't be, having sleepless nights or anything like that, but just to understand that this space is inherently risky. That is the core of dealing with new technology. And like Vitalik Buterin had said, be prepared at any time for any coin to go to zero. Have that mentality where no matter how much is adopted or how successful it is, be prepared for some sort of discounting to happen in the bear market or completely fade away into oblivion. And he didn't say that to scare the markets, more so he's preparing our mindsets to be able to deal with the pros and cons of being an investor, the pros and cons of this space, dealing with all these projects, and some, if not a majority, will fade away. So really, he's doing us a favor by saying that. And if you're a savvy investor, I'm just saying from my point of view, you're going to be considering and factoring this into your decisions, and not just blindly following what a celebrity says, or social media influencer says, or what the SEC says, or what any ICO says. You're going to do your due diligence, hopefully. You're going to get as much information and real good quality arguments being made for and against. And ultimately, you're going to have to you have to identify what your motive is in this space and what you're trying to get out of it, and how, not only how long you expect to be in this space, because you do have to have a long-term view if you really want to maximize the benefits for the potential upside, but really be honest with your intentions. If you're here to make a quick buck, or if you're here for the long term, or if you're here to just for different reasons, no one's judging you, no one's certainly when not telling you or ordering you or giving you financial advice. We're just saying from our observation and from our point of view and from what we're seeing and analyzing, this this could be this, or this could be that. But essentially, we all have to make that individual decision to or what our strategy is going to be moving forward, and where we are in this space, just to see not only where we are right now, but the bigger picture and what.
You know that song? It's the final countdown.
But listen, yeah, I'm wondering. This is why I'm like, because this is in the age, right? The bear market that we're experiencing. This is in the age where you've had a historic bull rise, a historic bull run, and facing like just how people, not only how people react, but even seasoned investors, like I want to see if they flip their position, if it gets to like less than $1,000. I want to see what they say, but I also want to see what how the average Joe reacts. And I'm gonna look at what from the regulatory aspect as well, whether they're seeing these things. I'm sure they are, and the timing of these announcements and launches. I'm going to see how they time it. Are they timing it perfectly so they can take advantage of the potential reversal, or potential extended breakdown and extended bear market? Like, it's really fascinating to see how whether they're going to be driving certain narratives to scare investors from coming into the space and getting them to stick with the traditional, or whether they're going to provide more investor protection and investor confidence, especially with the institutional ones. It's all like it's a new ground because there's a lot of uncertainty. It's a new space, so people want to really see how those what sort of precedents will be set. And then I think because of the human behavior and how we move and how the markets are designed to exploit the vulnerable, and the foolish and the ignorant. It'll be interesting to see what then happens after as well. So every stage is going to be critical, in my opinion. So with that being said, yeah, we're done for today. But boy, I had to mention, and I didn't go into detail on the others, but I had to mention them because, like I said, regardless of what the price will be, how low it'll go, uh, not everyone's going to just roll down and die and just give up and walk away. um, you know, I do believe 1,000,000% that there's going to be people that will be rocking until the wheels fall off. And you know that there's going to be people that see this as you know, with the opportunity mindset, and then there's going to be people with scarcity mindset. Let's see who wins. Is the market, is the, are the big boys going to win, the market going to win, investors going to win? We shall see. So anything, everything and anything is game, especially with the what the SEC is planning to do, go hard on these social influencers and celebrities for their past actions. I wonder if that's going to put off the more influencers coming forward and really trying to help. I think what's going to end up happening is that it's not just the legal advice they're going to take, but they're going to end up, the ones that are really serious about investing in this space or being promoters, I think they're going to end up doing more research. The ones that are really serious about it, they're going to take a more professional approach to it. It's not, because we saw that period of time last year when we saw that parabolic bull run, you had every celebrity, almost every celebrity, it feels like, jumping on the bandwagon, thinking this is like, you know, oil, what is it, we've struck oil, uh, like in Texas or something. So yeah, we'll be watching and waiting, but the best thing we can do is just prepare and just do our due diligence and move forward cautiously.
Sounds good, Azzy. Well, I'll be catching you next time. Appreciate all the info that you provide. It's always valuable, always useful. So maybe we could do, and we got some more interviews coming up this week too. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes, we do. We have one set for Wednesday in 2 days' time, and one for Friday. We're not going to reveal who they are. We know who they are, but we're not going to say it today. We want you to come and join us on Wednesday. But with with Sheree, with the last one that we did, oh my God. Shout out to you, Sheree, by the way, if you're watching us. We absolutely loved it. And we know there's so many incredible voices, incredible individuals in the space, blazing the a trail for each and every one of us. And we salute you. And I know there's going to be plenty more stories that will inspire us and give us real food for thought. So thank you very much for joining us, guys. Have a beautiful week. And any final words, Aking?
Nope. Peace.
Peace.
Everybody, love, spread love, and love each other.
That's a good way to end it. Thank you, guys. Peace out.